And now, a passage from New Mexico and the Texan Santa Fe Expedition by William Campbell Binkley from the Southwestern Historical Quarterly, October 1923. What was the attitude of the people of New Mexico toward the expedition which started from Texas in 1841 to establish commercial and political relations with Santa Fe? What preparations, either official or unofficial, were made in New Mexico to receive the expedition? Although recent investigations by students of Texas history have thrown much new light upon various aspects of the Texan Santa Fe expedition, these two questions have not been satisfactorily answered. The first, especially, has been the occasion of much conjecture, and there is still an honest difference of opinion as to whether any considerable part of the population of New Mexico was in sympathy with the plans of the Texans. The failure to answer these questions is due to the fact that the archives of Texas and of New Mexico contain very few documents bearing upon this particular angle of an event which was of grave significance to both groups of people. The most important information which has been available consists of accounts written by participants in the expedition, and these have been justly criticized on the ground that the writers could not formulate a clear estimate of the New Mexican side when they were so deeply involved on the Texan side. What seems to be the nearest approach to the material necessary for the correct answer has been inaccessible until recent years because of the fact that it was filed away in various government archives of the Republic of Mexico. Bolton's Guide to Materials for the History of the United States in the Principal Archives of Mexico furnishes a clue, and among the transcripts which were made under the direction of Professor Bolton during his researches in Mexico, there is a collection of something over 1,000 typewritten pages on the Santa Fe expedition. The documents include reports from the governor of New Mexico to the Mexican government concerning conditions in the territory under his jurisdiction, letters from other Mexican frontier officials concerning the activities of the Texans, papers confiscated from the members of the expedition, and instructions from officers in Mexico City concerning the measures to be taken in defense of Santa Fe. Even this array of material leaves much to be desired in the way of a definite answer to the above questions, but since it provides information from an angle which has not been reached previously, it seems worthy of consideration. Because of the nature of the subject, and also because of the shortcomings of the material, the attempt has been made to indicate the process by which conclusions have been reached, in the belief that, although it may prove somewhat tedious, it is essential to draw a distinction between conclusions based on definite evidence on the one hand, and those based on inferences, however logical they may seem, on the other. It has been necessary also to quote documents which have been quoted by others, but this has been done for the sake of fitting such material as has already been used into the thread of the narrative alongside of such new material as is being presented at this time. Although the story of the expedition itself is familiar, it should be pointed out that the episode was simply the natural result of the expansionist plans of the Republic of Texas, and that its objects were two: primarily to open commercial relations between Texas and Santa Fe, secondarily, if it seemed advisable, to establish the political jurisdiction of Texas over a region lying within the statutory boundary of the Republic. But this last part was to be undertaken only in case the inhabitants of New Mexico indicated their desire to unite with Texas. It is certain that the officials in Texas who were responsible for the expedition sincerely believed that the majority of the New Mexican population would welcome the establishment of Texan jurisdiction. This is shown by the small size of the party which was sent to Santa Fe, and is further emphasized in official communications of the period. In a letter addressed to the people of Santa Fe in April 1840, President Lamar apparently took it for granted that they desired to accept the government of Texas and promised to send commissioners in the near future to assist them in making the change. Then, in the instructions to the commissioners who accompanied the expedition, Samuel A. Roberts, the acting Secretary of State, made it clear that little opposition to their work was to be expected, and emphasized the fact that force was not to be used unless it was found that the authorities in New Mexico were attempting to thwart the desires of the inhabitants. In this case, if they found that the people were willing to support the Texans, they were authorized to use force against the Mexican officials, but under no circumstances were they to attempt to coerce the people themselves. While these documents furnish evidence concerning the belief of the Texans, they are not satisfactory proof that this belief was well-founded. It is necessary, therefore, to examine the information which was available in Texas concerning New Mexico. In the first place, the fact that even among the highest officials of the Republic, it was thought that Santa Fe was only about 500 miles from Austin would seem to indicate a peculiar ignorance of the geography of the region. If this was true, then a similar ignorance concerning the people might be expected. But it must be remembered that the country between Austin and Santa Fe had not yet been explored, and therefore accurate geographical knowledge was impossible. On the other hand, there had been almost continuous commercial relations for 15 years between citizens of the United States and the people of Santa Fe. Many of the men who were now in Texas had taken part in the trade over the Santa Fe Trail, and they knew something of the conditions in New Mexico. In addition to this, there were Texans in Santa Fe who were writing to friends in Texas concerning the opportunities there. These men knew of the boundary claims of the Republic, and even though they might not be there in an official capacity, they were almost sure to consider the possibility of the establishment of Texan control. Since all of those who had gone there before 1840 had done so for personal reasons and had no official connections with the government of Texas, the reports might be considered as unbiased accounts. It must not be forgotten, however, that as former Texans already established in New Mexico, they would possess tremendous advantages over others if Texan rule were extended to the region. But the fact remains that, whatever their value, such reports were the chief source of President Lamar's information concerning New Mexico. The question of possible commercial relations between Texas and Santa Fe was not new, even in 1840, but had been suggested by Stephen F. Austin in 1829 and in 1835. In 1837, George S. Park, a Texan who had escaped to Santa Fe after having been captured by the Comanche Indians, wrote that if Texas would open communications with Santa Fe, it would be possible to secure peaceably that important position in the interior of North America, that key which will unlock to the enterprise of North Americans the valuable country of California on the shores of the Pacific Ocean. Such a plan was commented upon favorably in Texas at the time. But a bill providing for the opening of trade with the northwestern part of the Republic was defeated in the Texas Congress during the following May. Park's letter intimated that the New Mexicans would offer no resistance, and early in 1839, new information from the frontier strengthened this belief. William Jefferson Jones, who had been sent to the frontier with an expedition under Colonel Henry Karnes against the Comanches, reported that he had been investigating the possibility of establishing communication between Texas and Santa Fe. He went into details concerning the commercial and political possibilities, and as to the attitude of the people of New Mexico, he said, "The great distance of Santa Fe from the government of Mexico has left that territory entirely dependent upon itself for protection, and the people only feel the authority of the political power through the weight of taxation imposed by the central head. They are prepared to unite with us, and this is the favorable moment to cement the friendship they have agreed to reciprocate. The revolutionary spirit is warm in New Mexico, and the people are determined to throw off the despotic yoke of the present government. We should at once demonstrate our sympathies with them." These letters furnish examples of the information which was reaching Texas, but their accuracy is questionable. Park's letter was written while a revolutionary movement was in progress in New Mexico, and it was not possible for him to learn the attitude of the people. Jones wrote purely from hearsay, and apparently did not know that the revolt of 1837 had been suppressed. As a result, his statements alone could hardly be accepted as an accurate account of the New Mexican sentiment toward Texas. While the revolt did show that the people of New Mexico were dissatisfied with the particular brand of Mexican rule to which they were subject in 1837, there was little evidence that they planned to declare their independence or to turn to Texas. But all sorts of rumors were abroad. Josiah Gregg, a Santa Fe trader of long experience who was there during the struggle, reported that the rebels planned to send to Texas for assistance, and it has since been intimated that Texan influences were responsible for the beginning of the revolt. That this point of view is untenable is seen from a statement made at the time by Richard A. Irion, the Secretary of State of Texas, that the New Mexicans, apparently unaware of the fact that they were included within the limits of Texas, had appointed commissioners to apply to the United States for admission. This erroneous supposition of Irion's was shared by the Mexican authorities, who professed to see in the revolt another plot of the United States to relieve Mexico of her territory. As a matter of fact, no outside influences had any effect upon the New Mexican situation, and the revolt was ended in January 1838, when Manuel Armijo succeeded in getting control over his fellow conspirators and was rewarded by the Mexican government with the appointment as governor. Up to this time, there was no indication of a desire on the part of the New Mexicans to turn to foreigners for assistance. But when Armijo assumed the authority of a dictator, their dissatisfaction began. And during the next 3 years, new possibilities developed. Armijo seemed continually in fear that some new movement might deprive him of his position, and consequently kept agents on the alert for signs of opposition. That the reports convinced him of hostility to his rule in New Mexico is evident from the communications which he sent to the central authorities at Mexico City. He realized the necessity of representing this as opposition not merely to himself, but to Mexican rule. And as a means of fixing the responsibility for this attitude, he called attention to the activities of traders from the United States. His complaints were begun in the fall of 1837, when his secretary wrote to the Mexican Minister of Foreign Relations asking that steps be taken to enforce the passport rules in order that illegal trade with the Indians might be stopped. During the next year, reports from New Mexico stated that revolutionary movements seemed likely to break out again as a result of the work of traders from the north. These traders were said to be furnishing arms and ammunition to the Apaches, and also acting as officers of the Indian forces. The developments of the Texan Revolution were, of course, known to the officials in New Mexico, and to Armijo this meant an additional danger. He expressed a belief that the Texans would soon make a move to occupy the upper Rio Grande Valley, and saw in the relations between the North American adventurers and the Apaches simply a plan to prepare for cooperation with the Texans when their forces should arrive. Then, in 1839, his fears seem to have been confirmed when he received information concerning the Carnes expedition. Although this was nothing more than an effort of Texas to subdue the Comanches, the account which reached Armijo made of it an expedition to penetrate the territory north of Santa Fe for the purpose of exploration, and with a view to informing a peaceful alliance with the Mexican residents of Santa Fe. In transmitting this news to the central government, he made his first statement concerning the attitude of the people of New Mexico toward the Texans by expressing a fear that many of them would be glad to assist in the establishment of Texan rule. It is necessary to consider this statement in its relation to Armijo's earlier reports in order to estimate its importance. From the time of his assumption of the governorship, he had indicated his need for additional troops in New Mexico. His story of an impending revolution did not bring the desired result, so he followed it with the danger from the traders and Indians. This also failed, so he has now turned to the possibility of a union between the Texans and the New Mexicans in order to arouse the government to action. In other words, if this hypothesis is carried a step further, the statement was made to secure a result which would be beneficial to him, and therefore, without other evidence to support it, its veracity is open to question. On receiving this last report, the Mexican Minister of War replied with a promise of assistance if the danger becomes imminent, thus apparently implying a doubt as to the seriousness of the situation. It is significant that Armijo made no more reports until March 1840, and that his accounts from that time up to the arrival of the expedition seem to indicate an effort to send on to Mexico City only such information as could be secured through his agents, and he had now begun to receive evidence which would bear out his statement of the previous summer concerning the attitude of at least a part of the inhabitants of New Mexico. About the middle of March, he received from Pedro Lujan the alarming news that a party of 500 Texans had just passed through Taos. This information was immediately dispatched to the Minister of War, together with a statement of the difficulty of raising a force to meet them, and a direct appeal for aid was made. On the next day, after this request was sent, he received a correction of Lujan's message concerning the Texans. The revised message stated that Lujan had misunderstood a conversation to the effect that a party of 500 Texans was supposed to be on the way to Taos. In spite of the fact that this revision destroyed the basis of his appeal for immediate assistance, Armijo showed his good faith by sending it on in the wake of the first report. On May 1st, after a conference with Manuel Alvarez, the United States consul at Santa Fe, he reported that all the Americans were hoping to see the Texan flag placed over both New Mexico and California, and soon after this he learned that an American by name of Nait had gone to Texas as the agent of the American element in Mora and Taos. to confer with the Texans on the question of a union. During the next month, the attitude of the New Mexicans themselves gave new cause for alarm. By this time, Armijo had become convinced that the arrival of the Texans had been delayed until September, and he urged the government to take advantage of the delay by sending troops to meet them when they did come. He now made the definite statement that he could not count upon the people of New Mexico for cooperation against a Texan invasion. He said, "The people will not defend themselves because they have expressed a desire to join the Texans in order that they may secure better conditions, and they are now merely waiting for the proper opportunity." His next report contained concrete evidence of this attitude due to the fact that it had become necessary to suppress a revolutionary movement in Taos. The ringleaders had been captured, and they reported that the lower class, which formed a majority of the population, hoped for the arrival of the Texan expedition in order that they might secure a release from Mexican rule and avoid paying their debts. Armijo added to this a statement that, with the exception of the priests, the entire population of Taos was favorable to Texas. This was used as a basis for a new appeal for aid, and the same information was sent to the governor of Chihuahua with the warning that the Texans might also be directing their drive against that department. With this twofold danger to face, Armijo now deemed it advisable to give up a projected campaign against the Navajo Indians and to make an unfavorable treaty with them. The failure of the Texans to arrive in 1840 reassured him, but he continued his watchfulness, and in April 1841 he reported that he was still attempting to organize the troops for the defense of his department. In the meantime, however, he had completely overlooked the activities of an individual whose work had a more direct connection with the Texan expedition than any of the developments which he was so carefully watching. This man was William G. Dryden, who had come to New Mexico from the United States as a trader several years earlier. He had made Santa Fe his home, had married a Mexican woman, and in 1839, after having served as a captain in the Mexican army, he was engaged in the caravan trade between Santa Fe and Chihuahua. During 1839, he quietly left Santa Fe, going by way of the Santa Fe Trail to the United States. In the spring of 1840, he appeared at Austin with a letter to President Lamar, in which he was introduced as a former officer in the Mexican service who possessed information of a valuable nature and who knew the attitude of the people of New Mexico toward Texas.